All right. Hey, everyone. This is Becoming Uncommon. And with Becoming Uncommon, we always look at different journeys and how to really take our skills and our goals to the next level. With me, I have Brett today. And for me, being able to watch his content and again, just somebody that respects the sport of track and field and everything involved in getting faster and making yourself a better athlete, it's something for me that is so valuable. Being in the coaching education world, I've noticed that there's always been a lot of misinformation, but there are a few individuals that are seeking, clarity in the world of so much confusion, so much, trying to break through the noise. And so, again, with me, my guest today is Brett Morse. So, can you please introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, so let's see. I myself was a 4-year college track and field athlete. I graduated in the spring of 2023. I did the 110 hurdles, long jump. I did the 100, 200, 4x1, all the short, fun, explosive stuff. I went on and I studied human performance. So I went on to get my degree. I then was a dual intern in both track and field and strength and conditioning. So I was essentially just an assistant track coach and an assistant strength coach. So it was pretty cool to see both ends of the spectrum there and how they kind of tie into one. After that, I went on to get my certification. I got the CSCS. That was about 6 months after my internship. And then since then, really just been applying my knowledge as both a former athlete and someone who pays attention to the studies to now helping the next generation of athletes after me. So I've been doing this now for about 2 years. I started off coaching in person primarily, did that for about 8 months or so. And I saw the opportunity with social media just to connect with a broader audience, a lot more individuals online. And there's a lot of small schools out there that are oftentimes pretty underfunded in terms of strength and conditioning and just speed development as a whole. So I've been working full time online for a little over a year now. And that's been an awesome experience just working with athletes all over the country. So, yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting because the opportunities to have that virtual level coaching, maybe we would have thought that it wouldn't be valuable, maybe 10 years ago, but now, um, it's so critical for a lot of people that maybe are in rural areas, don't have resources, are looking to kind of find that edge before maybe, linking up with that one coach that's going to help take them to the next level. What was like probably one of your biggest shocks in terms of taking it to like more of an online platform and kind of helping consult and coach
Yeah.
people virtually?
Honestly, man, my the sheer ability to get results online. Now, this was something I was a bit hesitant about, is like making that transition because I was like, like I'm not there in person. I don't know how much I can guide these kids, and I didn't know the difference I'd be able to make. But you'd be surprised when you work with higher level athletes, like they already have a good understanding of a lot of the technical aspects of training. When you just lay out a map for them and have them follow the plan, make sure they're kind of keeping in touch with me, making sure that they're doing things right, and if they have questions, they get answered. If you do all that, you get some incredible results, which was something that I wasn't sure how that would play out. So I started off coaching a pretty small group in the beginning, and it was more of a one-to-one thing with a very small group, 3 to 5 athletes, just to kind of test things out, see if this would be something that would work. And we did a 12-week cycle. From there, I'd see the results from week 1 versus week 12, and I was pleasantly surprised. So seeing how that played out, I then kind of expanded and focused more and more online. And since then, just the linear progression of being able to help out athletes is it's been incredible. So that's probably the biggest thing is I think kind of COVID in a sense changed everything. And if you have a good understanding already of training, which most athletes, at least my client base does, they just need a plan laid out for them and they need to be able to execute it and do things properly. And as long as they're able to do that, then the results, that's just a given. So that's kind of the one thing I noticed, just the ability to really help a whole generation of athletes in a sense.
Yeah, because one of my philosophies or epiphany I had, I was at Disneyland. This is a long time ago. I think my son that's 15 now, I think he might have been like 5 at the time. And we're waiting in line, and then a show got out, and it was just a flood of people. It's like, yeah, I don't know what happened. It just looked like so many people. And that's when I was really kind of in that upswing of getting deeper involved in like coaches education specifically.
Mhm.
And what I my epiphany at the time was there could be an Olympian in that crowd. There could
Yeah.
be somebody that's going to be an Olympian in that crowd. But what's the difference between how that individual ends up being an Olympian and not? And
Mhm.
what I'm, really interested with you specifically too is like there might be an athlete that they don't have the resources or access to things and kind of getting kick-started the right way because imagine you don't get guided. It could be frustrating. It could be, very disheartening to like not see results and kind of not even develop a passion for the sport just because you're not able to get guided and get appropriate guidance and coaching and feedback and have somebody that's going to help hold you accountable.
Yeah.
There's so many things that go along with it, but that's one thing for sure. I was just like, I never want to be the person that if somebody comes across my way and they have the potential to be an Olympian or see their Division 1 or Division 2 dreams come true, that then they came to me that they're going to leave better than what they came, kind of thing. And again, from a coaching education standpoint, a lot of information out there. So, who are some of your influences, and I guess like individuals that you find that are kind of a cornerstone mentorship for you?
Yeah, I actually one of the things I've done myself with continuing education is really leverage social media. Now, what I mean by that is I will be very specific with who I follow and who I pay attention to because their sole, I guess, basis of their content, a lot of it is surrounding education for coaches. So, a couple names that immediately come to head. Ben Moxness,
Mhm.
Athletic Doc on Instagram, he posts a ton of informative content that I myself apply to my athletes. And he's the guy that goes deep into the studies. He's really good at interpreting that stuff and explaining it. I'm not that guy. I'm not the one that really goes into the studies. I pay attention to stuff like that and I make sure I'm up to date with everything training related. He's the one that really can kind of distinguish between something that's good and bad in terms of literature. So I listen to him. I listen to another guy, Padula Performance, Joe Padula. He puts out a ton of content for coaches. And in terms of like the entrepreneurial space, Tim Riley, another big name in the performance space, I've loved to see what he's done and how he's accelerated his career from not just coaching to now he's opening a gym. I've been on his podcast. It's a super professional, awesome setup he has going on. And just seeing like the potential that can come from really just putting your foot on the gas and really going all in on building yourself up as a brand and as a business. So those are a few names that immediately come to mind, both from just like an entrepreneurial perspective and education and actually being a better coach, which is great. It's a great resource to be able to listen to podcasts, watch just short form content, and actually get educated from that stuff as opposed to 10, 15 years ago, you got to open up the textbooks and actually dive into it. And that's not something I enjoy doing. And I totally respect coaches that do that. And it's a huge help to me when they're able to do that and produce content that helps me apply it to my athletes. So, yeah, that's a few names that I definitely keep
Yeah.
up with.
Oh, that's cool. No, yeah, those are some really, really good names. Um, so when you explain things and you go through things, I notice that you have a very relatable tone and just like how you keep it real slash you are not watering things down. How did you kind of find your voice or your perspective in terms of relaying information and kind of shedding some light on some of the things that you talk about?
Yeah, I think a big thing about social media, if you want to be successful, is authenticity. And I think people can kind of read you like a book when you're not. If you're trying to play a character or a different role, they're going to see right through that. And in the beginning, I really wasn't sure kind of how to find my voice in a sense. And I really just thought to myself, you know what? Just be myself. There's no benefit in any way, shape, or form if I were to grow a following, uh, pretty much playing a character. So I try to just 100% be myself. I try to say what I feel. I try to form opinions on things that I actually believe. And I try to teach things that I use myself. I use it with my athletes. And I try to do it in a way where it's relatable. It's easy to understand, it's easy to apply. And I think that's really why I've grown at an extent that I did in such a short time period where a lot of coaches they'll try to play a specific role or they'll try to go too deep into the science or too deep into the practical aspect of training and I kind of try to just fit on both ends of the spectrum. What can athletes understand? What can they apply? They don't really care too much about the science, but also they need to know what they're doing is working. So you got to keep up with the science. You got to apply it in a manner which we know that it's something that's working. So Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just authenticity. Be yourself. Don't be afraid to say what you feel, and don't be afraid to have opinions on things that a lot of people may disagree with, because there's a whole nother group of individuals that are going to agree with you and actually like you more as a result. That's definitely something I've noticed.
Oh, wow. And so going a little bit further, like I want to kind of, or at least go back, a little bit more into your personal athletic background. So, like coming through high school, did you do multiple sports? Did you just do track? What did that look like?
Yeah, I primarily, when I was young, like middle school and earlier, I was doing more like basketball, baseball, football. I did a little bit of everything. Once I got to high school, I then kind of narrowed it down to football and track. I ended up doing track to get faster for football.
Yeah.
So I saw that there was a benefit there just to get faster in a 40-yard dash. I was never really the best football player. I was very skinny at the time, and I really wasn't super developed in terms of like the weight room. So I tried to utilize speed. And as a result, I ended up being better at track than I was at football. I saw a lot more pros than cons in that sport. Football's a tough thing on the body, and I saw with track and field, it's you versus you. Now, that's one thing I've noticed is like team sports versus like field sports and like track and field and like sprinting events. It's really you versus yourself. And yes, you are under an organization, you are a team, but it's just your name on the final results sheet, which I love because I saw the work that I put in. It would directly correlate to the results I would get. Now with football, there's politics at play, like who do the does the coach know a parent, this and that, and then there's also the aspect of like, hey, you could be an elite 5-star receiver, you get open every play, but if your quarterback isn't getting you the ball, you're not going to get the recognition you deserve. I
Yeah.
guess like some people can say it's a selfish mentality. I hate that. I love just being able to put the work in, see what I get as a result, know where I need to improve, and know what's working and what's not. Track and field is just an incredible sport for that. And I always recommend to parents, you got to get your kid in track at a young age because it's not going to just teach them things about themselves as an athlete, but as a person. It's going to teach you discipline, accountability, work ethic. It's going to teach you perseverance. So many different things that I didn't get from team sports. And I'm all for it. I love football, but I decided to go down the route of track and field and continue with that in college.
Okay. Yeah, I was just telling a parent actually, like, her daughter plays soccer, and when you're playing a team sport like basketball, soccer, football, you run as fast as you think you need to. But in
Mm.
track, you better run as fast as you possibly can. And people don't realize that those are different gears.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I heard a football coach say, "Oh, there's football fast and track fast," and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah.
um, but when it comes to those types of things, like once you decided to like go with track, or at least that's what it seems like, right? Like you're like lean towards that favorite track. What was that recruitment process like for you?
Yeah, I reached out to a lot of schools directly as a junior in high school. I know like at least in my area, you got to be committed before you're a senior. It's just like the track and field season, it's so late into the school year that if you're running fast 100, 200 times, whatever it may be, and it's June, for example, it's a little bit late. School's already got their whole roster full. So I reached out early. I really wasn't running super fast at the time. I did the pentathlon in high school. So pretty much every event, including sprinting, jumping, hurdles, you name it. I really wasn't good at the 1500, but I got recruited to run the decathlon in college. My senior year, fortunately enough, after I was committed, I ended up taking a huge step in the hurdles and the long jump and the open sprints. So I reached out to my coach after I was already committed, and then from there, kind of narrowed down to specialize in those events at the collegiate level. So I think the recruiting process for me was very smooth. I went to a small school, Cortland State University. It's about 45 minutes south of Syracuse. The thing that drew me to that school was just the athletic culture there. It's a school where like if you're going there, you're probably an athlete or you're at least interested in human performance or kinesiology. That's really kind of what it's known for. And I saw that as something that I wanted to follow. And the school just 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, they won the D3 national title for football. And they had kids. His name is Cole Burgess. He is actually in the NFL as we speak on I believe, Pittsburgh Steelers. And he came from Cortland. He was actually in my class. So it was an incredible experience being able to take that next step and compete at the collegiate level because it's different. You learn a lot, you learn who you are, you kind of become a man in a sense. And I'm so grateful for the 4 years I had there, and it taught me everything I know to this day. So,
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So now you look back at the recruitment process, it's a little bit different, huh? with
Yeah.
with
It's
with
it's rough, and it's I actually myself I worked with a kid who he was a junior when he came to me, so he was late in this process, and he did not have an indoor track and field program. So he came to me, he trusted me with his track specific training, so 60, 100. It was 6,200 indoors at that time, and then I took over his strength and conditioning as well. And fortunately enough, he ran unattached at a few meets and ran some really fast times. And that, as a result, got him a scholarship to run D2. And I was a part of that whole recruiting process with the coaches at the college because he didn't have a high school coach. So I was dealing with that and seeing it from the perspective of like a different generation and how it's working. And it's a lot tougher nowadays to get a scholarship, to get recruited, to run at a high level school than it is when I was competing. And that was just 5, 6 years ago. So it was eye opening, man. But I'm fortunate enough to be able to work with athletes like that they're not afraid to work hard and they're not afraid to really trust the process in a sense. And he ended up committing in this past March, so he will be there this next upcoming school year, which is awesome because usually, like I said prior, that's pretty damn late into the year to commit. So
Yeah, so now you mentioned earlier that using authenticity to which it sounds like helped you build validity in your voice and like how you disseminate information, how you connect with your clients and individuals that you work with. Now, how do you find yourself working to try to hold the validity? When I say that, I mean just obviously, like you mentioned, you keep up with the things that you need to keep up with to make sure you stay relevant with the sport and the training and the sciences, but more so just with yourself, like that
yeah.
balance between, business and everything else you got going on.
Yeah, I at least from a coaching perspective, one of the main rules I have for myself is never program something for athletes that I haven't seen successful with either another group of athletes or myself. So I still train for speed development, and I think that's a huge part of the process in becoming a good coach is like you got to know what certain movements feel like. You got to know what it feels like to be just completely trashed in terms of like CNS fatigue. You got to know what it feels like to be deep into a loading period. I think all these things are extremely important. And again, my rule is like if I haven't done it or if I haven't seen it work, I don't apply it. I don't apply things to athletes that I'm not sure how to actually do it and execute on it. Even if I think it'd be a great thing to apply, I got to run it through with myself first, or I got to run it through with a smaller group or whatever it may be. So I think that's one way to keep the authenticity in the coaching aspect of things. And with business, again, it's more just being yourself, just standing for what you believe in, holding the line in terms of coaching philosophies. And if you're I guess, hit with new info, don't be afraid to change your opinion on things. I think that's something that a lot of coaches struggle with is they get so married to specific aspects of training and specific philosophies. And even if they know they're wrong, they're afraid to admit it. And I think that's something that is not a good thing. I don't think there's any benefit in that. And even if it helps you build a business, and even if you see with like, I guess you call them movement cults, and they're just so deeply ingrained into like specific aspects of training. Yeah, it's like not to like name names, but like I don't know if you're familiar with like functional patterns or there's another group called Goda, and I have nothing against those guys. It's just like you can't be married to a specific training philosophy in a way where you treat it almost like it's a religion. Like you can't be afraid to change your philosophies on things if you're hit with new information that is better, more applicable, and you see it give better results. That's my
Yeah.
main thing. If I see something in my training and I know it's not working, I have no problem switching it up. And I have no problem as a result teaching that on social media or to my athletes that, hey, I've changed my opinion on this. I believe this now. I think that's totally fine to do.
Yeah, a German coach told me he was like, "I'd rather make a million different mistakes than the same mistake a million times." And
Exactly.
yeah, but no, that's the first time I've ever heard movement cult. I've always
Yeah.
thought about that concept, like that, and I get, I guess a formula to branding is attaching to something so that therefore there's a level of consistency with the branding, but like you said, just kind of getting fixated on one thing could be kind of tough. So the next question I have is like, because I was talking to a young coach, being a mentor and being able to work with a lot of different coaches coming up. What are your, I guess, or your philosophy on building yourself as a coach? Like obviously like staying current, doing things like that. But what are some things that you're looking forward or you're implementing that's kind of helping you sharpen your sword and making you, I guess, as successful as you are?
Yeah, I think definitely anecdotal evidence. I think that this is something I'm a big fan on. And this is something that a lot of coaches, I guess, in the science-based particular space, they kind of tend to bash that. And I understand the reasoning. I understand like, hey, if one athlete gets good results with things and another one doesn't, it doesn't make that one thing immediately valid for sure. But I pay attention to patterns. I see what works with myself. I see what works with a host of different athletes that have similar training goals and focuses, and they're programmed in a similar manner. And even if it's outside of the literature, I'm not afraid to say, okay, there's some merit here in terms of like, this is a good thing to program. So I try to stay very open minded in a sense. And if something may not fully align with the literature, I'm not afraid to program it if I've seen it work time and time again. I think that's a big thing is just being flexible in that regard, but also holding your standard in terms of the literature. Make sure you're not programming something just solely due to the fact that you think it's a cool looking movement or something that's fun to do. So you got to find that balance between the literature and knowing what works on a scientific level and something that has worked with athletes that may not withhold the actual literature, the statements made, and just like the science-based approaches. So yeah, I try to find that balance, and it's a tough thing to do because there's so much information online. So I try not to pay attention to too much. Rather, the guys that I see as, like you said prior, guys that I see that are educating another generation of coaches, for example. So yeah, I think that's the key thing is like checking both boxes. You got to pay attention to what's working in terms of like a scientific perspective and also what's working for you. How can you apply that and how can you continue to recreate those good results? So
Yeah. That's cool. And because it what made me think about is as a former decathlete, having that experience to being able to train through what is the highest level of like maybe complexity and like training dexterity,
yeah,
being a decathlete, I think having that perspective going into coaching training and working with people, I feel I do have a leg up on people sometimes, like having been a
yeah,
decathlete and taking
100%.
my body and moving and trying to find commonalities with movement patterns and so on. So I'm gonna go ahead for the decathletes out there. I'm gonna go ahead and
Yeah,
attribute a lot of that to that. So because that's what it sounded like too, just your ability to navigate that and not and see kind of through the face value of movements or training programming and how athletes are working. But what does a training program will work for you? So if somebody was working with you, do you guys do like video, like how? Because I mean, the growth of virtual training platforms has grown exponentially, obviously, like what you mentioned through COVID. But like, what is your process? Like, what do you go through when you're
yeah.
with an athlete?
So one of the core philosophies of my coaching is checking every single performance related box. Now, what I mean by that is you're not going to just get a program. You're going to get complete access to nutrition and supplementation guidance, recovery guidance, even sports psychology guidance. Now, this is what I saw work best for me. And when I was an athlete, the training, it was great, but I didn't take that next step and become an All-American until I applied all of the things outside of training. Now, that includes sleep, nutrition, taking some supplements if it feels fit to your specific goals, making sure that your recovery is good. Mentally, you're in a good position. You're managing your stress levels and you're managing performance anxiety, all of these different things that go into competition outside of just training. So, yes, I put a lot of eggs in the basket of programming. We make sure that everything that's laid out on paper is something that's going to work for the specific athlete I'm working with. But you better be damn sure you're hitting your protein goals, you're hitting your macros, you're taking your creatine, you're getting your 8 hours of sleep a night, you're managing your stress levels, because all those things, I personally think that's how an athlete reaches their true genetic potential. I've worked with athletes that are just freaks. They can come into the gym and power clean 3 plates with little to no warm up, and it's incredible to see. But those athletes sometimes tend to half ass the process outside of training. They're not really too good about diet. They're not sleeping the best, partying a little bit too much. You'll never reach your genetic potential doing those things. So you see someone like Tom Brady, for example. He didn't have the best genetics. He ran like a 5 something second 40. We've all seen the combine clips.
Hmm.
Not the most gifted specimen in terms of athletes, but he applied the work ethic and he had the knowledge and he had the persistency to really apply all of those things outside of training. And as you can see, it really worked. So that's just one of those things where I think with my coaching that I kind of separate myself with other individuals in this similar space online is like, you can go to another coach and you get a good program. That's fine. But if you're not hitting your calories, you're not hitting your macros, you're not sleeping the best, and that coach can't assist you in that process, good luck getting good results. That's something I've seen. I've even had athletes tell me like, yeah, coach, I've been doing good training like this for a while, but what you've given me in terms of nutrition really just stay holding me accountable in terms of everything I'm doing with recovery. This is why I was able to get X result. So yeah, I try to pretty much check every single performance related box and just cover everything.
Hmm. So do they send you video, or how do you meet with them, like via Zoom?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
So we
that.
essentially I go through everything in the beginning with them and make sure we have their goals mapped out, we have the training focuses mapped out, I handle all their macros, supplements, all that stuff. And then on a week-to-week basis, I have them like if they're doing an acceleration day or max velocity day, they'll send me some videos, send me some clips. I give them some quick cues and feedback just over text. Fortunately enough, the iPhone allows you to send some voice notes, so I really utilize
Yeah.
that, make sure that they're understanding what I'm kind of pointing out to them. And then from there, it's pretty simple with a specific group of athletes. Like if you're working with like I try to work with athletes that have a good understanding of training already, like kind of like what I said prior, because when you give them a cue and a correction, they immediately know. I'll see the next
Yeah.
week's video and I'm like, okay, he's actually working on this. I like trying to work with guys that are coachable and actually all in on the process of getting better. So yeah, the video analysis is huge. The coaching aspect of that is definitely something where I try to keep it flexible as well. So if we get a couple weeks into a program and something's not working or they're injured or they have a meet coming up or a meet got canceled, I go right in there and I change the programming as a result. So I think the flexibility, checking all the boxes in terms of training, those two things, I think they're huge and just making sure that the athlete reaches their potential when they're working with me. So
Do you use like your the strength conditioning? Do you build a strength program for them as well, or do you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I handle everything for them. So my main niche, in a sense, is speed development. I work with athletes that are trying to get faster, and I guess in the months in the past, I would work with more athletes in terms of like goals. Now I'm more focused on the niche of speed development. That's what I enjoy. That's what I train myself in. That's what I have a good understanding of. And I have a lot more experience in that sense. And I think it just makes the most sense to kind of niche down in that perspective. So I'll work with a lot of football guys. I'll work with, of course, a ton of track and field athletes. I'll work with like soccer players, lacrosse players, really any team sport athlete that just needs to get faster. And if you need to get, if you need to improve your 40, 60-yard dash, 100-meter times, I try to make it so I'm the guy you come to for that. And that's just kind of the main philosophy in a sense of where, in terms of physical qualities, I try to address when I'm working with guys one-on-one.
So, what was your biggest success story? Like the
Probably
one
that
that just
kid.
shocked you?
Probably the kid I mentioned prior who
Okay.
ended up he went on in that season not just get a scholarship, but the reason he was able to do that is because of his performances on the track in that indoor
Mhm.
season. So I had him run about 6 or 7 meets, and as a result of that, he won his state championship for the state of Ohio. So that was awesome. He was a state champion, and he wasn't even wearing his school's jersey; he was unattached out there. So he was a state champion. He then went on to finish ninth nationally at New Balance Nationals. At New Balance, he hit a new PR. So I organized training in a way to have him peak out at those last 2 meets, maintain everything we've worked on. And that's what happened. He ran a 679 in the 60. And the year prior, he never ran any indoors because his school didn't have it. But he was running like an 11.2. So 679 versus an 11.2, that's a big difference in terms of speed there.
Yeah.
So that was awesome to see that. He also broke the 22-second barrier on an indoor flat track. I think he went like 21.8. And last year he was running like 22.8 outdoors. So a whole second off the 200 and just shifting a few things around with his training. And I'm not sure what like your philosophy is on tempo training. But his coach, and this is something I see a lot at the high school level, he got worked into the dirt and he had stress reactions. He had hamstring issues. He had all these problems coming to me. And I was like, yeah, dude, what's your training look like? He's like, I'm out there 2, 3 times a week running 300-meter repeats at 70%, doing 8 to 10 reps of that. And I'm like, well, there we have it. So we dialed down the tempo volume. I focused more on, I guess, preparing him for the demands in which his event acquires. So he's running 6.5, 7 seconds indoors and then 10.5 seconds outdoors. So we train the specific energy systems to address those demands. And as a result, he leaned into that training. His body responded exceptionally well. And then that's where you get the scholarship in a sense. But I've had
Hmm.
other athletes where, like, in a 13-week period, um, add over 100 pounds to their back squat. I had another guy who added 75 pounds to his power clean. This is all in 12, 13 weeks when we do our testing. So it's a lot of younger guys where they're like 16, 17 years old. They don't have a high training age in the weight room. And then when you apply a structured plan and check all the other boxes outside of training,
Hmm.
you can achieve 100 pounds in 3 months
Yeah.
to a back squat. So I didn't think that was possible, but that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier in like the successes of like online coaching. Like, wow, like if this kid follows this plan, these are the results he
Yeah.
can get. So that's a couple different
Mhm.
athletes, but primarily him. He
Yeah.
was the main one that could loop.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you do you know the name Matt Clark?
I don't know. I do not.
Yeah, he's the sprint coach and strength coach at Kansas State now. He is like Travis Geffert's like right hand man over
Cool.
at Kansas State. Yeah, so we a lot of like your sentiments and like the way that you're flowing with how you think about speed training and complementary strength training. It really reminds me of him. Yeah, I think you should. Yeah, he's like. Another thing that reminded when you I think it was like you were talking about lifting during the season,
Mhm.
right? Do you remember that post or that?
Yes,
Uh,
I've made a couple recently.
yeah, because it's funny also. I mean, side note, is a lot of your stuff sometimes I'll send to my athletes to be because it's so funny that again, like when I talk about like the validity, you're in that realm where it just helps maybe compound some of the things that we've been talking about, we've been saying, like we've been preaching, and you say it in such a way that it's like they're gonna relate better to hearing it from you, and it like they're like, oh yeah, and I even had athletes have sent me your stuff and be
That's
like,
awesome.
Coach, what you think about this? And it's really funny, but yeah,
That's
yeah. So the way like you align those things, again, it really comes to mind like Matt Clark. He's kind of like one of the unsung heroes over at Kansas State with some of
awesome.
the things. He was at Arkansas previous to that, and and worked with those guys over there. But yeah, like so on that, I brought that up to ask, like, where have you ever had aspirations, or do you have aspirations of being like a collegiate coach or coaching, like in an institution in that way?
Honestly, man, as passionate as I am about the sport, as passionate as I am about performance training, track and field in general, no. And the only reason is just because with like my goals from a business perspective, I have other things I want to achieve within the next 5, 10 years that I don't think would be possible had I invested time into coaching. And
Mm.
I know in certain areas, and I know with certain schools in certain parts of the country, the pay is very good. But at least in my area, that's just not the case. I would see it firsthand with my internship coordinator. He would mention he was a really high level D3 strength and conditioning coach. He was an assistant track coach at the time, and he would always mention like, hey, if you're getting into strength and conditioning, don't be in it for the money because you're not going to get that. And I get what he's saying in a sense, and I do understand like it's a tough path to follow. And I think if you do want to take that next step as an entrepreneur, you got to go down the private route. And he himself has done that since I've been there, and I've helped him along the way with like social media, which has been cool to see. And he's a guy that taught me everything I know. He really has instilled specific values in terms of training philosophies and programming, and taught me what works and what doesn't, because he has 15 years of strength and conditioning experience. But he himself, with the knowledge he possesses, he would feel like he's not rewarded financially for that. So that was the one thing I try to kind of stay away from at a young age, is like, I have a passion for this. I want to do this. I want to make sure that I help the next generation of athletes, but I got to take the smart choice in terms of business and make sure I'm doing it in a way where I can achieve the specific goals I set for myself and go down a specific route if it requires it. So it's been a thought for sure. It's fun. It's definitely something like when I was an intern and I was coaching track and field as an assistant, I would love to see what myself given to athletes be applied directly and have that benefit them. But you gotta you gotta weigh your battles. That's all.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's like it shows like a high level of perception or perspective for you personally about how you want to take this. Um, and in even deeper than that, being able to work in that private world, you kind of get to control and are not confounded by the bureaucracy and
Yeah.
politics that are associated with those things. So like for instance, even for me, like not working at a division one program versus working at a community college, I get to work with the have-nots. Like that's like my passion. Like that's where I,
Yeah.
I find my why. And I when I was at division one, like there was an athlete that I really wanted that I felt really I could change their lives, and one thing led to another, and I just couldn't work with them because they didn't get admitted.
Yeah,
And like,
exactly.
yeah.
It's out of your control, man. It's just one of those things. It's tough to see that, and you are essentially under complete control from the organization above you, and it oftentimes doesn't lead to the best results for the athletes. And I've noticed with like that coach I mentioned prior, my internship coordinator, I still hear a little bit about what's going on at the school I used to go to. And they had a change in programming with like the football organization there. And as a result, the football coaches have kind of like come down to our coach and he's been like, oh, like we don't want these guys doing power cleans. We don't want these guys doing a lot of plyos, all this stuff. And I'm like, that completely contradicts my whole training philosophy. And you kind of have to follow along. If the sport coach comes to you, they want specific things for your athletes. You got to do your job. And even if it does contradict your philosophies and your beliefs, and it's not the best for the athletes. And it's sad to see it. And it's funny you mentioned that because it's literally something I heard about a few days ago where like the whole programming of that school, not from him, but from the sport coaches has changed. And as a result, his programming has changed. And then the results of that, not so good. So yeah, you like I said, you got to pick your battles. And I myself, I have a lot more flexibility. I can work with who I want to work with. I can stay away from who I want to stay away from. I can program everything for these athletes. I don't have to worry about any other coaches kind of coming in and changing the programming. And the best part is I work entirely for myself, meaning if I don't want to work on a certain day for whatever reason, I can always do that. Whereas like there's some organizations like I would see coaches get in at 5, 6 a.m. They don't leave till 7, 8 p.m. They're working with teams all day. I love it. Again, I'm passionate about it, but not that passionate.
Yeah. Well,
That's
it
all.
kind of even goes back to like what you're talking about with football and track, right? Like that high sense of, hey, it's on me. And
Yeah.
I'd rather die on my own sword than work really hard and be controlled or, misguided in another way. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that tracks. So at least you're, like I said, you're consistent on that one.
Yeah.
A couple things I wanted to wrap up, definitely get your opinion on. I'm so thankful for being able to connect with you. Again, I love the things that you do and kind of the route that you're taking.
Oh,
What's your take on, I think it's a little bit overused now, but the concept of like trackflation and what your theory is and why these marks now are just like insane. It just,
yeah. I've thought about this a lot recently because I'm only 3 years removed from collegiate competition. And I'm looking at the like NCAA leaderboards for like D3, like who I used
mm,
to compete against and like what marks I would have ran and where it would rank me today. And man, the change, like so to give you an example, the NCAA D3 national championship, the 110 hurdle time that usually wins the meet, at least when I was competing, was like a 14:0, 14:1. You'd
mm,
be very lucky to get sub 14. Now, at this year's meet, about a month ago, there was like 5 or 6 kids sub 14. A kid won it with a 13:4, and that kid's PR is like a 13:25, 26. I could be wrong,
yeah.
which is crazy. That's a D3 athlete running a mid to low 13 in the 110 hurdles. Insane. Now, with trackflation as a whole, I think it's just a combination of a ton of different variables. I think for sure we know a lot more about training than we did 10 years ago. I think for sure a lot of athletes have more resources, whether it's like private training, whether it's investing in going to a specific school, nil, who knows? There's a lot of finances at play there and like politics in that sense of like you can be a 17-year-old athlete making millions of dollars running for a school just because of nil deals. So that leads to, as a result, more motivation to become an athlete. I think as a whole, we have more athletes than we did 10 years ago. And I definitely do think genetics play a role. If you have athletic parents, it's likely you're going to be more athletic than them, or at least as athletic. So I think there's definitely something to be said about that. As a whole, I just think the combination of all these different variables like training, genetics, resources, it leads to kids in high school running 9.8s, which is unbelievable because just 5 or 6 years ago, or I might have been actually, because I think this kid's still in high school, Matthew Bowling.
Yeah.
When he was in high school, I was in high school. I think he's around the same age as me, and he ran a 9.99, and the world freaked out about it. And
Hmm.
now, like a 9.99, like that's nothing for high school kids, which is crazy. It's like that was less than a decade ago. So seeing it now, seeing just the level in which some of these guys are competing at, I've seen like D3 guys, Sam Blaskowski. He used to run at Wisconsin Lacrosse. He was a 100 guy. He's won like over 10 D3 national titles. I would compete, not against him, different event groups, but I would be at every national meet he would be at, and I'd see him compete. He went on to compete with, I think it's called Star Athletics. He's competing with like Kenny Benderick, Christian Coleman. He's under that same training group. He's, I think, top 5, top 10 in the world right now. He ran a 9.89 recently. He just ran a 9.91. This is a D3 kid. So I don't know. I think when you apply all the right things and you have a good situation in terms of like training partners and training environment, coaching, some incredible things can happen because I think that kid coming out of college, I think he ran like a 10.0, maybe a 10.1 at D3, and then just a year later he runs a 10.80 or 9.89, which is like insane. So, yeah, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think
Um,
as a whole, a combination of a bunch of different variables in a sense.
Hmm. Yeah, like again, I think about it a lot as well and see what are some of the trickle down effects of it. What do you think about this? With any level of inflation, there's the potential of the bubble popping or bursting, right? Or at least some level of like plateau. How do you see that playing out, or have you thought about that? Like when is this spike gonna at least level off?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, human beings can only run so fast from point A to point B. So I do think we will continue to go up over the next decade. And I think eventually it's it's something that's hard to predict, but it wouldn't surprise me like 2030s, 2040s, we have more and more guys running consistent 9.5, 9.6, times like that in the 100, fully natural. Now, I mentioned that because I know the enhanced games is a big thing. That's going to play a role in a lot of that. That's where you push that genetic potential. But in terms of like Olympic competition, it really wouldn't surprise me if in the next decade, like you guys got guys like Gout, and I know there's a lot of controversy over his time. I don't know, but regardless, he's still running 20.19 high and he's 16, 17 years old. So there's definitely something to be said about the progression that can be had with younger kids, 17, 18 nowadays, 10 years from now. That kid Tate Taylor, he just ran sub 20 and he's competing in like the Diamond League or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if at some point Usain Bolt's record falls and there's more guys running around that 9.5 range, low 19 range, and
Mhm.
that's consistent. That's like a world final. So we'll see. I don't know. I it's so hard to predict.
Yeah. Well, that's what it like. I was looking at going into like the NCAA championships with, those sub 13 hurdlers,
That
then
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
then you have that 42.99 4x4
Yeah.
split. 1060 young lady, 1063, I think, in the
Yeah.
100. And it's like, because like when I went to school, 1063, you were a legit male sprinter. Like you were
Yeah.
solid.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah, I forgot you reminded me Jacoby Tharp. He's running 12.75 and he's 20 years old. So who knows
yeah,
what this kid will look like when he's 26, 27? Like I know we saw what Grant Holloway did for as long as he did, and he's still
yeah,
in that conversation. I know he picked up an injury this past season, but he's going to be out there competing against them. We'll get Devin Allen back. Like it wouldn't surprise me if maybe even this year or next year we see guys running 12.6 in the 110 hurdles, which is it's unbelievable to even think about
yeah,
that. But it's the level in which we're at now. 20-year
yeah,
old and a
yeah.
12.75.
Point
Unbelievable.
nine touchdowns and all that. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's insane.
insane.
Yeah, like I was the head coach for the junior worlds, the U20 worlds when in Jacoby, in watching him just abuse those 39-inch hurdles
Oh,
was like, yeah, being able to like watch practice and be with him and watch those and just like this, yeah, he's different. This is different.
different.
Like he just was disrespectful to those 39-inch hurdles. Like
Yeah,
they didn't stand a chance. So yeah, no, he's a definitely a talent. And just watching again, like you brought up, like Gout and all the young talent. Because when I think about trackflation now, at least that it's not so much that everybody's getting better. It's just the depth of elite or like that next realm of performance, like you said, there's going to be more people doing it. Just
yeah.
that depth is just getting deeper and deeper, with people not finding limitations with their training. But and and on that same note, so how do you navigate the difference between gimmick and something that you would associate with validity? Just because right now things move so fast and like there's everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel to some degree. So there are a lot of gimmicks out there, but there are a lot of things that are legitimate and what we would consider valid and credible through from a research standpoint. But as long as it takes to validate something through research, like you might be missing the boat. So what's your process of like navigating that?
Yeah, man. I think at the end of the day, results speak for themselves. So, for example, there's always like some controversy about the weight room and how it applies to speed development and like track and field. And you can just see like just with my athletes, I see like they get stronger in the off season, and I work on some things with them, obviously in terms of technique. But like just the off season alone, it's a 4 or 5 month period, at least at like the collegiate level. Those guys will come into that next season way stronger. And then as a result, they have their best season ever. And the training structure of the team they're working with was the exact same. The only difference was what they did in the offseason.
Hmm.
So that alone, you don't need studies to tell you that something worked and it had relation to the weight room. Whether you agree with it or not, they're the results, and that's nothing that's going to change. So I just see it a lot with my athletes, and I pay attention to what has worked for an extended period of time for a wide variety of different athletes. And I think that's kind of how I approach training in that sense of like the validity aspect of it. It's like if something's tried and true and it's tested and it's worked for generations, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We'd see Usain Bolt in the weight room. You see Asafa Powell in the weight room. You see these high level guys. You think they're just doing this by mistake? They're just doing it for fun. Like there's clearly something to it. So yeah, I my end all be all approach to that is results speak for themselves. If you're promoting a training philosophy and there's no results to back it, like I mentioned the movement cults earlier, um, then I can't really apply that myself. I don't see anything. I don't see any merit with that. So I try to just stay with what works and avoid what doesn't, and make sure that I'm seeing what works has worked time and time again for a ton of different athletes, different coaches, you name it. So
Yeah, because what I'm thinking about it, in wrapping up, I want to, appreciate your time for sure, just because you dropping a lot of gems and insights. But one thing that stands out to me is like your confidence and like betting on yourself. Like, where do you get that confidence, or where did that develop over time? Was it, something you felt natural? Like,
yeah.
where do you get that from? Where do
No,
you
this
attribute
is
that?
kind of a funny story. So when I was younger and I was like early in high school, late middle school, like 12, 13, 14, 15 range, I really didn't have confidence. I was a skinnier kid. I'm just naturally skinny. I would see like kids my age, essentially way stronger than me. They're performing better in football, basketball, this and that. I didn't have that confidence. I had to craft it myself. And fortunately enough, with my high school track and field program, they laid out the blueprint for me. They really forced me to get in the weight room, and I took it seriously. And as a result, I would see myself get stronger. I would see more muscle growth. I'd feel better as a result of that. And then you go again, take it to the track and perform better. So again, there's the applicable experience there, like weight room to track. But the confidence was one of those things where I had to essentially prove it to myself that I'm capable of putting the work into something and seeing what the result can be. So that's something where I've heard the quote. I think it was Alex Hormozy, a big guy in the business space. He said, confidence is just stacking up a ton of undeniable proof that you're capable of doing something. Now, I'm kind of paraphrasing that, but you have to prove to yourself you're able to do it. And until you prove you're able to do it, you're not going to have it. So I would see I've proven to myself at a young age I was able to get stronger. And then as a result of that, I proved to myself I was able to run faster in track, win a sectional title, this and that. And then from there, go to college. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to stack up these accolades. I can do this. As long as I put my work in and I put my foot on the gas, I can do this. And then at the collegiate levels, where that takes a huge step because then you're competing at around the country with different guys that are at the same level as you, and you're beating them out because you put more work in, or you had the better performance on that day, you had the better mindset, you name it. That I think again, it kind of ties into like what I was saying about like track and field teaching you a lot of good life lessons. I would just see the work I put in lead to me becoming a 3-time All-American, for example. And that it definitely helps in terms of your ability to be confident. And I see it with business today. If I spend more hours on a specific task, it's likely the result of that task and the quality of it is going to be a lot higher. I think just knowing that you can do something, that's the biggest thing because I see like a lot of young athletes and just young individuals, they kind of feel hopeless in a sense. And I myself was at one point, and they've never proven that they're able to do something difficult and do something hard. And they've never given themselves the chance to trust the process in a sense. And then once you trust the process, you see it pay off, you see the dam break, you get the results, then the confidence, now you know again you can replicate it. So I think the biggest thing with confidence is just proving to yourself that first time you're able to do something and something that is very sought after in terms of achievements. Once you do it once, you just keep repeating it, you climb that ladder. That's all. That was at least my personal experience with that.
Okay. No, that's a big less because like you said, I think you touched on a lot of really key things like stepping into hard, making sure that you're self-aware enough to at least put yourself in a position to be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so what is I guess what would be your key piece of advice like say for instance like you had to go back and talk to your younger self as you're trying to navigate your athletic career and your journey what's like maybe a core piece of advice you would give yourself coming out of high
Yeah.
school.
I would say I would say stop caring so much about how you feel in terms of motivation and lean into the work ethic because even though it feels bad now, in the future, it's going to feel so much better when you've achieved X, Y, and Z. Now, I myself, when I was younger, and like I said, 12, 13, 14, 15, I never worked hard on anything. I didn't have to, in a sense. I just was a regular kid going to school playing sports, but I would never excel in sports. I would just see others better than me and I would chalk it up to like, oh, they're just naturally stronger, or they have better genetics, this and that. And at the end of the day, a lot of that is just BS. Of course, genetics play a huge role in things, but at the end of the day, work ethic, that's everything to me. And I've seen it pay off. I would tell myself that, hey, man, like it's not going to be easy. It's not necessarily going to be fun, but none of that stuff really matters. Do you want that goal or do you not? Lean into it, lean into the discomfort, lean into the hard times in a sense. And then as a result, everything will pay off. So, yeah, I wish at a younger age I learned more about work ethic, but fortunately enough, I was young enough to where it can pay off for me nowadays because there's a lot of people my age that still haven't gotten that.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, man. Oh no, I love it for sure. And so, with that being said, what's on the horizon? Like, what can people look forward to from you in the next, 4 or 5 years from now? What are you planning? What
yeah,
do you?
man, something at least I try not to think too far ahead. But at least something within the next 6 months to a year, I will soon be releasing a social media specific mentorship for other performance coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, because like we were talking about earlier, it's not always a profession that rewards you financially. You're going to spend a lot of long hours in the gym and you may not get rewarded as a result. And you have a level of knowledge that can change lives. You can get kids scholarships. You can do things that oftentimes are not possible in like a team-based setting. So I'm essentially going to kind of lay out the map and lay out like the whole plan in which I put in place that helped me to get from point A to point B and help a whole generation of performance coaches that want to do kind of what I'm doing. So the main point of this mentorship is to be growing your social media presence, building your personal brand. And then as a result of that, you can pick the way in which you want to monetize that. So I'm going to have a ton of different lessons about monetizing with like partnerships, coaching, training teams, you name it. The main theme, though, is like, how are we going to get you 50, 100,000 followers in a year, 2 years? That's something that is life changing. It changed my life. And even like I mentioned prior, the other coach I was helping, I'm seeing him work privately and train specific athletes that he never had the chance to train before he got into social media. So, yeah, the main thing, at least in the shorter time frame, 6 to 12 months or so, is that social media specific mentorship. It's going to be a small group of people I work with, and I want to make sure that this is something that works for them. So there's going to be a lot of trial and error and testing and changing things up if it's not working, kind of like we were talking about with coaching. But that, and then of course continuing with my one-to-one coaching with my athletes and making sure that they're getting the best in terms of their results on the track or the weight room or on the field, whatever it may be. So I have a lot in store, and I'm slowly but surely putting this mentorship together. I'm trying not to rush it. I'm about 25 to 30% done with it now. So hopefully by the end of summer, this will be available to a small group of people. But I do see it as something that can help a lot of individuals avoid the, I guess, troubles of kind of buying into a team or a gym or whatever it may be. And then as a result, they look back and 10 years are gone. They're like, wow, I could have done something with that time that elicited much better returns. So
Hmm.
that's on the horizon.
That's exciting. No, that's exciting. That I think that's amazing. Just the fact that being able to kind of almost package, your lessons, like a lot of the maybe the trial and errors that you had to go through, and all the things that you had to do to put yourself in a position to, be where you are today. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. That's cool. I love that.
Yeah.
And with that being said, where can people find you? How can they reach out to you, your services, things like that?
Yeah, at pretty much all platforms is just at Brett Morse Training. You can go to my website, brettmorsetraining.com, and get in touch with me with coaching. So you can apply for coaching there. Again, that's just for performance coaching at this time, just be development with the mentorship. I'm not entirely sure yet how I'll do that, but probably something similar. Regardless, though, get in touch with me at Brett Morse Training, pretty much all platforms. I will get back to you there. And then I don't think I'm forgetting anything. So that should be all.
All right. Well, yeah, hopefully maybe we get you on the master circuit. You said you were training, right? You get you on
Yeah,
the master circuit pretty
I
soon. I think you have
um,
like 3 or 4 years left, but we can get you in that sub masters group. We can get going.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because like I said, I still like training myself like an athlete, and I apply everything I apply to myself to my groups. But it's tough. It's tough finding meets in my area. It's tough just really locking down the travels and
Mm,
paying for the meets, paying for the hotel, this and that. It's like sometimes I question, oh, is it worth it? But fortunately enough, like I have access to performance tracking devices with like OVR performance. So
mm,
I will still train my 40-yard dash and my 60 and my 100, and it may not be as fast as it would have been if it's competition coming out of starting blocks with a gun going off. But eventually, I think that will be something I do. Hopefully, this summer I can enter a couple meets and just see where I'm at in terms of a 100.
all
Because,
right.
yeah, we'll see. I never ran the open sprints specifically until now. I always had the hurdles to deal with, or the long
Okay.
jump, or all these other obligations. So we'll see.
All
Hopefully
right. All
soon.
right. Exciting. Well, again, thank you for your time. Other than that, be uncommon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.